The rain in Greyhaven doesn't just fall, it attacks. It was 2:04 in the morning, and the Tuesday night shift at the Lighthouse Diner was dragging its corpse toward Wednesday. The storm was throwing itself sideways against the plate glass windows, trying to get in outside. The neon lighthouse sign was bleeding red and blue onto the wet asphalt, the colors shattering and reforming in the puddles like broken stained glass. My hands were traitors. I hid them under my stained apron, the fabric smelling faintly of bleach and old grease, trying to still the shaking. I'd been counting the tips again in the alcove by the coffee machine. A $5 bill, maybe 3 ones, and a pile of quarters that felt cold and heavy in my palm. It wasn't enough. It was never, ever enough. Grandma Etta's prescription bottle was sitting on her bedside table, the little orange plastic staring at me every morning when I came home. Maybe 3 pills left. The refill cost was $312.55, and I was short. I was always short. The shaking wasn't from the cold, though the diner's heater was fighting a losing battle. It was the low, dull thrum of panic that had become the soundtrack to my life. Ding-a-ling. The bell over the door was a cheerful sound for such a miserable place. It usually meant one of 2 things at this hour: a trucker needing coffee to make it to the state line, or trouble. This man was neither. He didn't walk in so much as he materialized from the storm. The rain clung to his black overcoat, a coat that cost more than my last 6 months' rent. He wasn't big, not in the way that meant muscle, but he took up all the air in the room. He paused just inside the doorway, letting the water drip from the hem of his coat onto the worn checkerboard linoleum. His hair was dark, plastered to his forehead by the rain. And his eyes? I've worked the graveyard shift for 2 years. I've seen junkies, exhausted cops, and heartbroken drunks. This man was different. His eyes were calm, the color of the harbor at midnight, and they looked like they'd seen storms worse than this one and hadn't bothered to blink. He moved to the counter, the squeak of his expensive leather shoes echoing in the near-empty diner. Old man Hemlock was asleep in booth 4, nursing a beer he'd been working on since 10. Parker, the night manager, was in the back, probably skimming the register. I grabbed the heavy glass pot of coffee, the rocket fuel we called it, and slid a thick ceramic mug onto the counter. I didn't say anything. I just tilted the pot. He looked at me. Not at me, but through me. He saw the shaking hands, the exhaustion, the cheap apron. He saw it all in about half a second. And the words just fell out of my mouth. Stupid and raw. You look lost. I froze. My breath hitched. Idiot, Maya, idiot. You don't talk to men like this. You just pour the coffee. It was the exhaustion talking, the desperation. It was too familiar. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He just held my gaze for a beat, then gave a slow, deliberate nod, as if I'd said, "Nice weather." "Black," he said. His voice was deep, laced with gravel. No sugar. I poured. My hand was steady now, shocked into submission by my own stupidity. He watched the black liquid fill the cup, then wrapped his long fingers around the ceramic, borrowing its warmth. I turned away, polishing the chrome espresso machine, my face burning. I could feel his eyes on my back. Then the bell slammed open. It wasn't a ding-a-ling this time. The door crashed against the wall, rattling the glass. Trouble. 3 of them. They smelled like wet wool, cheap beer, and aggression. I knew them. Everybody on the night shift knew them. The halcyon ring. They weren't the top brass, just the street-level muscle, which made them stupid and dangerous. The leader, Milo, was all jaw and small, piggy eyes. He laughed, a wet, barking sound, shaking the rain from his greasy hair. "Parker, you cheapskate, where's the grub?" Parker Hume materialized from the back room, already sweating, wiping his hands on his apron. He was a weasel of a man, with darting eyes that never met yours. "Milo, fellas, it's late. Kitchen's closing up." "Closing," Milo sneered. He swaggered over to booth 4 and slapped the table, jolting old man Hemlock awake. "Hey, Pop's time to pay your tab." Hemlock blinked, confused and scared. I paid Milo. Interest. Old man. Interest. Milo grabbed the half-finished beer and downed it. I saw Parker edge toward the wall phone. "I'm calling 911. Maya," he whisper-shouted at me, holding the receiver to his ear. But I was watching his other hand, the one hidden by the edge of the counter. He was holding his other phone, the burner he thought nobody knew about. His thumb was flying. Text, text, text. He wasn't calling the cops. He was reporting in. My blood went cold. "Leave him alone, Milo," I said. My voice was thin. Milo turned. His smile widened. All yellow teeth. Well, if it ain't the princess, you gonna stop me, sweetheart?" The man at the counter hadn't moved. He was just watching, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. Milo and his two goons, a twitchy one named Rat and a mountain of muscle who just grunted, started toward the counter. They were going to clean out the register. Or worse. The stranger set his spoon down. He didn't drop it. He placed it on the saucer. Click. It was the quietest sound in the diner, but it cut through the hum of the freezer and the hiss of the rain. Milo stopped. Rat stopped. The mountain grunted. The stranger's eyes, those midnight harbor eyes, were locked on Milo. They were cold, colder than the rain, colder than the bottom of the ocean. They were blade cold. Milo, full of cheap courage and cheaper beer, didn't like being looked at like that. "What are you looking at? Suit you lost, too?" He mimicked my word. The stranger didn't answer. He just watched. Milo needed to prove he was the biggest dog in the yard. He turned his attention back to me. "Hey, waitress, you heard me. Whiskey, for me and my boys, and open the register. Now." He was too close. I could smell the sour mash on his breath, the damp rot of his jacket. I stood my ground, my hands gripping the edge of the counter behind me. "We're closing the bar, Milo, and I don't have the key for the register." He laughed, that ugly, barking sound. "Closing." And he shoved me. It wasn't a tap. It was a full-bodied shove. He put his weight into it. I flew backward, my shoulders smashing into the glass of the pie display. The lemon meringue pies rattled. A sharp pain shot down my arm. "Don't touch her." The voice wasn't loud. It was heavy. It was full of rocks and steel. It vibrated in my chest, in the floor. The stranger was on his feet. He hadn't moved fast, but he was just there. He stood between me and Milo, his expensive coat unbuttoned. He hadn't touched anyone. He was just standing. Milo, to his credit, was stupid. Or what? Suit you and what army? Rat, the twitchy one, didn't like this. His hand went inside his jacket. I saw the dark glint of a knife handle. He was going to pull it. Ding-a-ling. The front door opened again. The bell was soft this time. Two men. They were different. They were big, yes, but they wore suits cut from the same cloth as the strangers. They were clean-shaven, professional. They looked like they belonged in a bank vault, not a greasy spoon at 2 a.m. They didn't look at the stranger. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at Parker, who was frozen by the phone, his lie exposed. They looked only at Milo, Rat, and the mountain. The shift in the room was electric. The air pressure dropped. Milo froze. The blood drained from his face, leaving it a pasty gray. He recognized them. He knew them. Rat's hand, the one that had been going for the knife, came out of his jacket, empty. He held it up, palms out, as if to show he was unarmed. The mountain just looked at the floor. "We were just leaving," Milo stammered. The bully was gone, replaced by a terrified little boy. "No trouble here, just leaving." The two new men didn't move. They just stood by the door, blocking the rain. "Go," Milo whispered to his crew. They backed out of the door, tripping over their own feet, nearly falling into the street. The storm swallowed them. The two men waited a beat. Then, without a word, they turned and followed, disappearing back into the night. The diner was silent. The stranger turned. He looked at me, his eyes scanning my face, my shoulder. He looked at the pie case. Then he looked at Parker, who looked like he was about to be sick. He sat back down at the counter. He lifted his cup and drained the rest of his coffee in one long, slow pull. He stood, pulling a wallet from his breast pocket. He didn't look inside. He just pulled out a bill, a crisp, folded $100 bill. He placed it on the counter, next to his mug. "Change the lock on the back door," he said, his voice quiet again. "The one with the rusted hinge." My breath caught. He knew the back lock was rusted. "And don't use the alley tonight." His eyes met mine. "Take the main street, all the way." He knew my routine. He knew I cut through the alley to save 5 minutes on my walk home. The panic I'd felt earlier, the money panic, was nothing. This was a cold, sharp dread. He turned to leave. His hand was on the door. "Who are you?" My voice was a squeak. I had to know. He paused. He looked back at me over his shoulder, and he smiled. It wasn't a real smile. It wasn't warm. It was sharp and appreciative and terrifying. It was the smile of a wolf that had just decided which sheep to watch. "Dante," he said. "Dante Rovan." The door closed. The bell dinged softly. I was left staring at the $100 bill. The rain lashed the windows. Rovan? The name scratched at my memory. A name I'd heard whispered by the dock workers when they came in for coffee. A name on the side of gleaming new construction sites that went up overnight, swallowing whole blocks. The Rovan Consortium. Maya Quill, a graveyard shift waitress just trying to keep her grandmother alive, had just told the invisible king of Greyhaven that he looked lost. I stared at the door he'd walked through, my hand pressed to my aching shoulder. The most terrifying part wasn't the violence, or the money, or the way those thugs had evaporated. The most terrifying part was that, when I'd said it, I think I was right. I didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury, and the $100 bill sitting on my kitchen counter felt like an accusation. I'd used the main street, like he said. The walk home took an extra 15 minutes, my shoulder throbbing from where Milo had slammed me into the pie case. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. I kept that $100 bill separate from Grandma Etta's medicine money. It felt different. It felt heavy. I was stirring instant coffee into a chipped mug, the gray morning light just starting to filter through my blinds, when the pounding started. It wasn't a knock. It was a fist. Boom, boom, boom. Meridian Bureau opened the door. My heart didn't just jump. It tried to escape my body. The Meridian Bureau. They were the good guys, the internal affairs of the city, the ones who supposedly investigated dirty cops and politicians. "Boom, boom, boom! Open the door or we will force entry." I fumbled with the deadbolt, my shaking hands from last night returning with a vengeance. I barely had it unlocked before the door flew open, pushing me back. 3 men, 2 in tactical vests over blue windbreakers that just said Bureau in bold white letters, and 1 in a cheap suit, holding a piece of paper. They were all business. "Maya Quill?" the suit asked. Not really asking. "Yes, but I don't—" "We have a warrant to search this premises for illicit contraband and related materials." He didn't show me the warrant, he just waved it. "Contraband? What are you talking about?" They were already inside. They moved with a terrifying efficiency, a practiced destruction. One went to the kitchenette, pulling open my sparse cabinets, dumping the box of oatmeal onto the counter. The other went to my bedroom. I heard my mattress being flipped, the scrape of my dresser drawers being pulled out and dumped. "You can't you're ruining everything," I protested, my voice thin and useless. The man in the suit just watched me, his eyes dead. "Ma'am, please wait in the hallway, for your safety." They nudged me out of my own apartment into the dim, cabbage-smelling hall. I stood there, humiliated, in my threadbare pajamas as they tore my life apart. And then I saw him. Down the hall, at the far end by the stairwell, leaning against the peeling paint, was Parker Hume, my night manager. He wasn't in his diner uniform, and he was in a polo shirt, looking like he was just in the neighborhood, A complete, total, impossible coincidence. He saw me looking. He gave me a sad little shrug, then jerked his head toward the stairs. I crept toward him, my bare feet cold on the dirty linoleum. "Parker, what are you doing here? What is this?" He wouldn't look me in the eye. He was looking at the floor, at the ceiling, anywhere but at me. "Maya, listen." His voice was a low, nervous whisper. "This is big. It's bigger than the diner." "What is—" "Just if they find something or if they ask you questions, maybe you should just cooperate. You know, just tell them whatever they want to know. It'll be easier for everyone. It'll all go smooth." "Cooperate about what, Parker? They're looking for contraband. I don't have anything." His eyes, weasel-like and terrified, finally met mine for half a second. "They always find what they're looking for. Maya, just be smart." He straightened up, gave me another one of those pathetic shrugs, and slipped down the stairwell. I stood there, the cold seeping into my bones. They always find what they're looking for. "Ma'am." The suit was back at my doorway. "We're clear." "Clear? You found nothing." "Your apartment is clear. For now." His eyes raked over me, a look of mild disgust. "We'll be in touch." They filed out, their boots heavy on the stairs, leaving my door hanging open. I walked back in. It was a violation. My clothes were everywhere. The cushions from my $20 thrift store sofa were on the floor. The food from my fridge was on the linoleum. I started to cry. Hot, angry tears of frustration. I went to shut the door, and my hand brushed the lock. It felt gritty. I looked closer. The metal around the keyhole was scratched, fresh, silvery marks against the old brass. Someone had been here before the bureau. Someone had picked this lock. I turned and ran to my bedroom. They had dumped my main drawers, my socks and shirts, but they hadn't touched the bottom drawer, the one that stuck, the one where I kept my high school diploma and the few pictures I had of my brother. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely get the wooden drawer open. It screeched in protest. And there it was, tucked underneath my diploma, where I knew it hadn't been last night, was a small, heat-sealed plastic bag. It was filled with a fine, white powder. It was a setup, a perfect, beautiful, terrifying setup. Parker's words echoed in my head. They always find what they're looking for. They hadn't found it because they knew it was there. They were sending a message. They were showing me they could plant it, and they could find it anytime they wanted. My breath came in ragged gasps. I couldn't call 911. Last night, Parker's secret text. This morning, the Meridian Bureau. They were connected. The cops were in on it. I grabbed my phone. There had to be someone else. I remembered a name from a bus stop ad, a billboard that always seemed to be vandalized. The Atlas Integrity Commission, the Anti-Corruption Agency, the real good guys. I Googled the number, my fingers slipping on the screen. I dialed their hotline. Beep, boop, beep, a busy signal. I tried again, busy. I tried the main switchboard. A recording picked up. "Thank you for calling the Atlas Integrity Commission. Due to unprecedented call volume, your wait time is approximately 3 hours. Please stay on the line." 3 hours. It was a joke. It was a brick wall. A light knock came at my door. I jumped, nearly screaming. "Maya, it's Luca, from 3B. Luca Penn, and he was a freelance photographer, a shy, nervous guy who mostly kept to himself. I opened the door a crack. "Luca, what's wrong?" He was wringing his hands, his camera bag slung over his shoulder. I'm sorry to bother you. I was up late, working, and I saw something last night." What did you see?" "After you got home, maybe 3:30 in the morning, there was a guy across the street by the laundromat." "A guy, what was he doing?" "He had a camera," Luca said, his voice dropping. "A long lens, a real professional rig. He was Maya. He was taking pictures of your window for almost an hour." My blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. They weren't just watching the diner. They were watching my home. They were watching me. "Thank you. Luca, thank you for telling me." I shut the door. The panic was a living thing now. clawing its way up my throat. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. I grabbed my purse. I looked at the bag of powder. I couldn't leave it, but I couldn't take it. I took out my phone. Snap. Snap. I took a picture of the bag in the drawer. Snap. I took a picture of the scratches on my lock. Evidence. It was thin, but it was something. I had to go to the police, not my local precinct, the one Parker had on his burner phone. I'd go across town. To the 17th. They had to be clean. Right. I threw on my diner uniform. It was the only clean thing I had left. Grabbed my keys and ran. I hit the street. The morning rush hour was over, but the city felt wrong, hostile. Every face was a potential threat. I started walking fast, heading for the bus stop on 47th Avenue. A black sedan turned the corner behind me. I didn't think anything of it. It was Greyhaven. There were a million black sedans. It stayed behind me. I crossed the street. The sedan made an abrupt, illegal U-turn and fell in line again, half a block back. I stopped at a bodega, pretending to look at the window. The sedan pulled over to the curb, double parking. Just waiting. No plates. The space where the license plate should be was just an empty, black bracket. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I wasn't going to the cops. I was being herded. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. It was from Parker. Plumbing disaster at the diner. Places flooded. Shifts canceled. Stay home. A lie. It was such a clumsy, stupid lie. I changed direction. I wasn't going to the bus stop. I was going to the diner. I had to see. It took me 10 minutes. The black sedan following me the whole way, lazy and confident. I turned the corner onto the diner's block, and I stopped. The Lighthouse Diner was dark. A heavy, industrial chain was looped through the glass-paneled doors. A sign, printed in stark black letters, was taped to the window. Closed by order of the Meridian Bureau, pending internal investigation. My phone buzzed again. Parker. Sorry, Maya. Just got the call. They're shutting us down for a bit. It's a temporary layoff. For everyone. Pending the investigation. Don't come in. My job was gone. My apartment was compromised. The cops were part of it, and I was being followed by a car with no plates. I was cut off, adrift. The phone buzzed, a third time. A new number, unknown. The message was short. 6 words. Don't go to the station, they're waiting. My fingers were numb. I typed back, who is this? The reply was instant, 2 initials. D.R. Dante Rovan. He was watching. He had been watching this whole time. I looked at the black sedan, still idling by the curb. I looked at the chained-up diner. I looked at the text message. I had no home, no job, and no allies, except maybe the most dangerous man in Greyhaven. I didn't know where to go. My feet just started moving, away from the diner, away from my apartment, walking on pure, uncut adrenaline. I walked toward the river, toward the only part of the city that felt open. I found myself on the Davenport Bridge. The wind was high up here, whipping my hair across my face, tasting of salt and industry. It was a cold, bright, terrible afternoon. And he was there. He was halfway across, leaning against the iron railing, looking out at the murky water. He wore the same black overcoat. The wind tugged at it, but he seemed as solid as the bridge's suspension cables. He didn't turn as I approached, the sound of my sneakers loud against the pavement. I stopped 10 feet away. They raided my apartment, I said. My voice was stolen by the wind. I know, he said. He didn't shout. His voice just cut through the noise. They planted something. Parker, my job. I know. He turned. His eyes were the same, midnight calm. Someone wants to make you a lure. Maya, they think you saw something last night. They think you're a loose end. Or, worse, they think you're my loose end. A lure for what? The Halcyon ring is sloppy. The Meridian Bureau is greedy. They work together, but they don't trust each other. And they're both terrified of me. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. A simple fact. Parker, I whispered. He was in on it. Parker Hume has an account with a bank you've never heard of, Dante said, his gaze fixed on me. Centurion Bankworks. It's where dirty money goes to get clean. Parker's account gets very full whenever the Halcyon Ring needs a favor or when the Meridian Bureau needs a witness to look the other way. It all clicked. The text, the raid, the planted evidence, the cooperation. They weren't trying to frame me. Not yet. They were trying to control me, to use me as a bargaining chip. What do they want from me? I asked. They want you to be scared. They want you to run, either to them or to me. And now you're here. I have nowhere else to go, I shouted, the frustration and fear boiling over. They took my job. They'll find that package the next time they come. I can't even call the cops. I know, he said again, softer this time. He took a step closer. The wind was a wall between us. They think they control your apartment, your job, your freedom. They think they have you in a box. He looked at me, a long, assessing look. It wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel. It was calculating. Tonight, he said, at 10 o'clock, I'll be back. Not at the bridge. He paused, letting the location sink in. The back alley, behind the diner. The alley he told me to avoid. They've taken everything from you. Maya, your job, your safety, your peace of mind. They left you with nothing. He held my gaze. Bring the only thing they don't control. The one thing you still have left. What? I whispered. Your courage. He turned and walked away, coat flapping, disappearing into the pedestrian traffic on the far side of the bridge, leaving me alone with the wind and the impossible choice. I left the bridge, Dante's final words echoing in the wind. Bring your courage. Courage felt a lot like desperation. I had hours until 10 o'clock. I couldn't go back to my apartment. The scratch lock and the little bag of white powder were a neon sign pointing to a trap. The plateless sedan was gone, but they knew where I lived. They were just waiting. So I went to the one place that felt safe in its own grim way, the Greyhaven Public Hospital. The hallways smelled like ammonia and weak coffee. I stood outside the ward, looking through the wired glass window at Grandma Etta. She was asleep, her breathing shallow, her face looking impossibly frail against the starchy, industrial white pillowcase. The monitor beside her bed beeped a slow, tired rhythm. This was why. This was the raw nerve they were all leaning on. The stack of bills on my kitchen counter was for this place, for the medicine they rationed, for the bed they charged by the hour. I remembered, just last month, taking on a second job. After my shift at the lighthouse, I'd walk 3 blocks to the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar on the wharf, and wash dishes until 4 in the morning, standing in the back room, my hands raw from the scalding water and industrial soap, the smell of stale beer and fried fish clinging to my hair, just to scrape together an extra $40, maybe $50 a night, all for her. Looking at her, I couldn't help but think of the other person they'd taken, my brother, Noah. This whole sickness in the city, the rot I was just starting to see, it started with him. I flashed back to the courtroom. 9 months ago, it wasn't a trial, it was a performance, a bad high school play where everyone knew the ending. Noah stood there in an orange jumpsuit looking bewildered, his public defender shuffling papers he hadn't read. I remembered the prosecutor, a sharp man from the Meridian Bureau named Vale, with perfect hair and dead eyes. He'd barely looked at Noah. He'd looked at the press, at the judge. A danger to the public trust, Vale had said, his voice smooth as polished stone. A conspiracy to undermine the integrity of this city's finest. Noah, my brother, who used to get flustered ordering pizza. He'd been an entry-level data clerk for the city. They said he'd sold internal records. But the trial was a blur. It was over in 2 days. The verdict came back so fast it felt like it had been written beforehand. Guilty, gone. This wasn't my first time being ignored by the system. I remembered 6 months ago, Milo and his Halcyon Ring crew were leaning on Mr. Chen at the corner bodega, the one where I bought Etta's ginger ale. I saw them kick over his fruit stand. I saw them pocket cash. I did the right thing. I went to the 12th precinct. I filed a report. I gave names, descriptions, the time. The desk sergeant typed with 2 fingers, looking bored. A week later, I called for an update. The sergeant, a different one, put me on hold for 10 minutes. "Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here," he finally said. "Quill nothing. You sure you filed it?" It had vanished. Poof, like it never existed. The system wasn't broken. It was a closed loop. I couldn't stay at the hospital. They did rounds. They'd ask questions. I needed a computer. I needed a place where I was just another face. The public library. I took the long way, the bus that wound through the suburbs, my head down, my hoodie pulled up. I sat at a carrel in the back, the yellowy light humming, the air smelling of old paper and floor wax. I reached into my wallet. Tucked behind my faded student ID was a tiny, black micro SD card. Noah had pressed it into my palm in the visiting room, the week before his sentencing. His eyes were wide, terrified in a way I hadn't understood. "Maya," he'd whispered, his voice hoarse, checking over his shoulder. "This is insurance. Don't look at it. Don't plug it in, unless you're in the kind of trouble I'm in, unless they come for you, too. Don't trust the Bureau. Don't trust any of them." I'd been terrified of it, terrified of what it meant. But I was in that kind of trouble now. They had come for me. My hand was shaking, the same tremor from the diner, as I slid the tiny card into the slot on the side of the library's aging computer tower. A drive icon popped up, NQ_insurance. I clicked it. One folder inside, not documents, video files, dozens of them. They were screen recordings, shaky, as if someone had recorded a monitor with a phone. I clicked the first one. A spreadsheet filled the screen. It looked like an accounting ledger. Centurion Bankworks. Dante's words hit me like a physical blow. The bank where dirty money goes to get clean. The columns had codes, not names, but the numbers, my God, the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions, moving between accounts. I clicked another video, another ledger. And then I saw them, names, tucked into memo lines, listed as consulting fees or disbursements. Dear R. Vale, Director Vale, the prosecutor from Noah's trial. Captain M. Hendricks, the captain of the Meridian Bureau, the one who'd been on the news, accepting an award for civic integrity. My brother wasn't a criminal. He was a witness. He'd stumbled into the dragon's den, and they hadn't just fired him. They'd buried him alive. My stomach twisted. I felt cold, sick. There was one file left in the folder. It wasn't a video. It was a single, encrypted file, payouts_local. I clicked it. A password box appeared. Below it, a single, strange question, a riddle. What belongs to you, but is used by others? I stared at the screen, my mind racing, my apartment, my money used by others, all the time, at the diner, at the hospital, at the police station. They use my name. My fingers flew over the keyboard. MAIAQUILL. I hit enter. The file opened. It wasn't a complex ledger like the others. It was a simple PDF, a bank transfer log from Centurion Bankworks to a local account at Greyhaven National Bank. The amounts were smaller, $500, $1,000, $1,500, sent on the first of every month, regular as clockwork, with bonus payments. I recognized the dates of the bonus payments. One matched the night the diner next to us had a mysterious fire. One matched the night old man Hemlock had fallen down the stairs. And I recognized the name on the account, the recipient. Parker H. Hume. My breath left my body in a single, painful whoosh. I gripped the edge of the desk. Parker. His sudden appearance at my apartment. Maybe you should just cooperate. His burner phone at the diner. Plumbing disaster, temporary layoff. He wasn't just a weasel caught in the middle. He was the lookout. He was the rat, taking dirty money from the Halcyon ring, reporting back to them, telling them when I was vulnerable, when the register was full, who to pressure. He was the one who let them plant that bag in my apartment. He was a puppet, and the Meridian Bureau and the Halcyon ring were pulling the same strings. It all crashed down on me. The raid wasn't to frame me. Not yet. It was to push me, to scare me, to make me desperate. I yanked the card from the slot. I had to get out. The library suddenly felt like a glass cage. I walked out into the dusk. The city lights were coming on, blurring against the cold evening air. It was almost 8 o'clock. 2 hours until my meeting with Dante. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new number, unknown. "We know you have the drive." I froze in the middle of the sidewalk. People bumped past me. How could they know the library was I followed? Another buzz, same number. "Noah should have kept his mouth shut. You should learn from his mistake." Another. "If you keep that file, you won't make it to the morning. Meet us at the old Kelleher Pier in 1 hour. Come alone, or we pay a visit to your grandmother. She's at Greyhaven Public, right Ward 3B. Signed, R. S." I didn't know the initials, but I knew the threat. Halcyon. They were squeezing. They were trying to cut me off, to grab the evidence before I could give it to Dante. I stood at the crossroads, my blood pounding in my ears. The pier was left. The diner alley was right. I could go to the pier. I could give them the card, beg them to leave Etta alone, disappear, run. Or I could go to the alley. My whole life had been about running. Running from bills, running from confrontation, running from the truth of what happened to Noah. Dante Rovan, the man who moved in shadows, are the thugs who operated in the light. I was so tired of running. I turned right toward the diner. I pulled out my phone, my fingers icy cold but perfectly steady. I found the number. D.R. had texted me from... I typed, "I'm in 10 o'clock, but I'm not your lure. I'm not a victim. If we do this, we set the rules." I paused, my thumb hovering. I thought of Etta. I thought of Noah. I hit send. The reply was almost instantaneous. Good. I checked the cracked screen of my phone. 9:30, the Kelleher Pier, the threat from Ertzes against my grandmother was a parasite feeding on my nerves. They were expecting me in 30 minutes. They were expecting a terrified waitress, clutching a micro SD card, ready to trade it for her family's safety. They were going to be disappointed. After my "I'm in" text, Dante had replied, "Good." And then, 1 minute later, venue change. They're watching the alley, Harker Pier, Warehouse 8, 10 o'clock. Come alone, you'll be safe. Harker Pier was the skeleton of Greyhaven's old shipping industry. It was a place you went to disappear, not to be found. The wind was high, snapping at my jacket, carrying the smell of dead fish and low tide. Warehouse 8 was a collapsing mountain of rust and corrugated metal. The main door was sealed, but a smaller side door was open, just a crack. I slipped inside. It was vast, dark. The only light in the cavernous space was a single, bare bulb hanging over a heavy metal table, casting long, distorted shadows. He was there, Dante Rovan. He wasn't in his overcoat. He was in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing strong forearms and a simple, dark watch. He wasn't alone. The 2 men from the diner were here, the ones who had materialized and vaporized the Halcyon ring thugs. One was huge, broad as a doorway, standing sentinel by the entrance. The other was a woman. I hadn't seen her at the diner. She was lean, with dark hair pulled back in a tight knot, and her eyes, like Dante's, missed nothing. They were scanning the rafters, the exits. She was coiled like a spring. "You're late," Dante said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement. I took the long way. I was followed. "The black sedan," he said. "We know. It's taken care of." "Taken care of?" "They're having mechanical trouble," the woman said, her voice dry as sandpaper. "They'll be busy for a few hours." I walked toward the light. The threat from Art was burning a hole in my pocket. They texted me, R.S. They told me to meet them at Kelleher Pier. They threatened my grandmother, Etta. They know where she is. Dante didn't flinch. "Yes. Rex Sable. He's Halcyon's cleaner. He's impatient." He looked at his watch. "He's just arriving at the pier now. He'll be very annoyed you're not there." "He'll go to the hospital," I whispered, the panic rising. You don't understand. He'll find an empty bed. Dante cut me off, his voice flat. My people moved your grandmother 2 hours ago, right after Art made his threat. My breath hitched. What moved her? Where is she? She's in a private clinic, St. Mirren's. She thinks she won a hospital lottery for a free room upgrade. She's safe. She's comfortable. They cannot use her against you. Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy, but it was followed by a chilling realization. He had moved my grandmother, without asking. He had eyes and ears everywhere. This was the world I was stepping into. I steadied myself. I thought of Noah. I thought of the setup. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the tiny, black micro SD card, and placed it on the metal table. It looked pathetic. I'm not selling this, I said, my voice clearer now. Harder. The three of them looked at the card, then at me. This isn't a transaction. I am not for sale. I won't trade one set of monsters for another. You get this. I tapped the card with one finger. When my terms are met. The big man by the door, Ivo, shifted his weight. The woman, Seraphine, raised an eyebrow. I have 2 conditions, I said, holding Dante's gaze. 1, my brother, Noah Quill. He was framed by the Meridian Bureau, prosecuted by Director Vale himself. I have the proof. I want him out. Exonerated. His name cleared. I took a breath. 2, my grandmother, Etta. You protected her tonight. You keep protecting her. Whatever this is, I motioned to the shadows. The guns I couldn't see but knew were there. It never touches her. She is safe. Permanently. That is the price. Dante looked at me for a long, silent moment. He wasn't analyzing my words. He was analyzing me. Seraphine, he said, not breaking eye contact. Verify. Seraphine moved with a liquid, silent efficiency. She unzipped a rugged-looking backpack and pulled out a heavy, encrypted laptop. She booted it up, slid the card into a slot, and her fingers began to fly. Rex Sable is getting nervous, Natim, Dante said to me, his voice conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. He's calling his men. They'll check the hospital. Find her gone. Then they'll go to your apartment. They'll toss it again. They'll realize they've lost their leverage. They'll realize they lost you. Boss, Seraphine said. Her voice was tight. Dante moved to her side. Looking at the screen, I saw the reflection of the ledgers I'd seen in the library flicker across his dark eyes. The lists, the names, Vale, Hendricks, Parker. He scrolled. He was silent for a full 30 seconds. Ivo cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the warehouse. Dante finally closed the laptop. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than calm. I saw hunger. A cold, controlled fire. This isn't insurance, Maya, he said, his voice low. This is a declaration of war. You've been carrying the match that can burn their entire corrupt system to the ground. You don't just have records. You have the Meridian Bureau's private bank. He nodded, a sharp, decisive movement. The deal is accepted. We will secure your grandmother's protection. We will dismantle the case against your brother. Boss, Ivo rumbled, stepping forward. It's a good haul, but they're hunting her. Halcyon wants the drive. The Bureau wants her silenced. She's the biggest liability we've got. How do we keep her alive long enough to use this? We don't, Dante said. We don't keep her alive. We make her a ghost, and we make them hunt someone else. He turned to me. Your role is what they intended it to be, Maya, but we're writing the script. You will be the blind spot, the place they think is weakest, but it's where the blade is hidden. How, I asked. The plan is called Crossfade, Dante said. They threatened you to get this card. They think you're terrified. They think you're stupid. We let them keep thinking that. We're going to use your former manager, Parker Hume. My stomach tightened at the mention of Parker's name, the rat. Parker is taking money from Halcyon, Dante continued, pacing slowly. But he's also an informant for the Bureau when it suits him. He's trapped between 2 predators. We're going to leak a story. We're going to make both sides believe that Parker double-crossed them, that he made a copy of this drive and is trying to sell the original to the highest bidder. We'll make them believe you were just a pawn, Seraphine added, catching on, that you were so scared you gave the drive to Parker to cooperate, just like he told you to. Exactly, Dante said. We make them fight each other. We force them to expose themselves, and we do it in public. Where, I asked. The one place they all have to be, Dante said, a predatory smile touching his lips. The one night a year they all gather to lie to each other's faces, the Night Fen Charity Gala. I knew the Night Fen. It was the biggest social event in the city, held at the Museum of Art. Tickets cost thousands. It's in 2 nights, he said. It's hosted by the Meridian Bureau's Civic Integrity Fund. Director Vale himself is the keynote speaker. The Halcyon Ring bosses will be there, laundering their reputations, pretending to be legitimate businessmen. It's a theater of hypocrisy, and we're going to burn the theater down. Seraphine stepped forward. She held something small and silver in her palm. You're the catalyst, which means you're the primary target. You're not going in helpless. She handed it to me. It was an earring, a simple silver stud. It looks like cheap jewelry, she said. It's not. The back is a pressure sensor. You press it. She demonstrated on her own ear. You hold it for 3 seconds. Exactly 3. Not 2, not 4, 3. And what happens? Ivo grinned, a scary sight. We happen. Every Rovan associate in a 5-mile radius gets an alert with your exact coordinates and a signal that your life is in immediate danger. 3 seconds and the cavalry comes. I took it. It was heavier than it looked. I put it in my left ear, the post cold against my skin. Boss, it's a huge risk, Ivo said, his voice low, meant for Dante, but I heard it. She's green. Rex Sable doesn't make polite arrests. If he gets her... Dante held up a hand. He stepped into the center of the light, addressing his team. But the words were for me. Touching her, he said, his voice dropping, is touching me. The silence in the warehouse was absolute. Is that understood? He said to Ivo and Seraphine. She's not an asset. She's not a pawn. She's under my protection, the full protection of the Rovan Consortium. Any man from Halcyon or the Bureau who lays a hand on her loses the hand. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. It was, as he'd said, a statement of fact, like a nail hammered into a coffin. Ivo and Seraphine both nodded, a sharp military-style acknowledgement. The air was settled. They were a team. And I, somehow, was now part of it. They began to pack up, moving with that same silent efficiency, collapsing the table, packing the laptop. Within a minute, the single bulb was turned off, and we were standing in the shadows, the only light coming from the moon through the grimy skylights. It was just me and Dante, by the door. I have to ask, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He turned. He was close. I could feel the heat radiating off him. You don't know me, I said, trying to steady my voice. This drive, it helps you. It helps you fight Halcyon. It helps you fight the Bureau. I understand that. That's business. But my brother, my grandmother, that's messy. That's personal. I looked up at him. Why are you doing this for justice? Or are you just using my match to start your own fire? He was silent for a beat. I could see the faint outline of his face in the moonlight. Both, he said. The honesty of it hit me harder than a lie would have. I want to dismantle the Meridian Bureau because they are a cancer on this city, he said, his voice a low gravel. I want to break the Halcyon Ring because they are my rivals. This drive helps me. That part is for me. He took a step closer. We were inches apart. But justice, he scoffed, the sound bitter. I saw the file on Noah Quill. I've seen what the city's justice does. It's slow, it's broken, it's for sale. I saw what they were planning for you. That little bag in your drawer. That's how they work. His dark eyes found mine in the gloom. My justice is faster. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. I wasn't looking at a hero. There were no heroes in Greyhaven. I was looking at a man who was, in his own way, just as dangerous as the men hunting me. But he was the only one who had told me the truth. He was the only one who had offered me a weapon instead of a cage. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about romance. It was something harder. It was recognition. I saw the damage in him, the same damage I felt in my own chest. We were two people who had been pushed to the edge, and we had both, in this cold, dark warehouse, decided to stop running. We were going to push back. I touched the earring. The metal felt cold. "Good," he said, as if I'd spoken. "Seraphine will take you to a safe house. Get some rest. The gala is in 2 days. You're going to need it." The next 48 hours were a blur. The crossfade plan was a lit match dropped on a puddle of gasoline. Dante's people were ghosts, and they were masters of the whisper campaign. Word hit the street like a fist. Parker Hume, that sweaty, nervous little diner manager, wasn't just a rat. He was a shark. The rumor was that he'd been playing both sides, the Halcyon Ring and the Meridian Bureau, for months, that he'd gotten his hands on something big, something digital, something that could burn them all. And now, Parker Hume was in the wind, gone. The city held its breath. You could feel the shift. The Halcyon Ring was furious, their street thugs tearing up the docks, looking for the man who stole from them. The Meridian Bureau was worse. They were quiet, surgical, they were spooked. They put out a bulletin on Parker, not for theft, but for questioning and a matter of civic importance. And then there was the Atlas Integrity Commission. Suddenly, their phones weren't busy. They announced they were opening a preliminary investigation into the Meridian Bureau's handling of several recent cases, citing anonymous tips Dante's match was catching. I was a ghost, too. I was moved from the warehouse to a clean, anonymous apartment in a high-rise I didn't recognize. Seraphine was my shadow, Evo my transport. "Today, we feed the shark," Seraphine said, handing me a plain black burner phone and a micro SD card. It looked identical to Noah's. "Rex Sable thinks he's scaring you into a meeting." "He's right. You're going to be very, very scared." The Holloway Underpass, noon, the concrete belly of the city, a place where sunlight died. Evo drove, a heavy black sedan that looked like every other car in Greyhaven, but I knew the engine was anything but standard. "Seraphine is on the North Overpass," Evo rumbled, his eyes checking the mirrors. "She has eyes on everything. You're going to get out, walk to the center pillar. Sable will approach. You look terrified. You cry. You beg him not to hurt your grandmother. He doesn't know we moved her. So use it. You give him the dummy card. You get back in the car. And if he doesn't let me go, he'll let you go," Evo said. "He thinks he's won." As if summoned, 2 cars, a beat-up muscle car and the black, plateless sedan from before. They boxed us in, front and back. My heart hammered against my ribs. A trapped bird. "Showtime," Evo said. I got out. The air in the underpass was cold, smelling of exhaust and damp. I clutched the dummy card in my hand. He emerged from the muscle car, Rex Sable, and he was average height with a thin face and eyes so pale they looked empty. He was the voice from the text. He was the one who had threatened Etta. "You're stupid to make me wait," he hissed, closing the distance. I did what Seraphine said. I let the fear take over. It wasn't hard. "Please," I stammered, holding out the card. "It's all of it. I don't know what's on it. I swear, just leave my grandmother alone, please." He snatched the card from my hand, his lips twisting into a sneer. He looked at it, then at me. "You're pathetic." He turned his back, signaling to his men, "Let's go. She's nobody." I was backing toward Evo's car, my hand on the door handle, when a piercing, chemical white light exploded on the pavement 10 feet from Sable's car. Puff of crackle. Seraphine, a flare. It hissed and sputtered, blindingly bright, flooding the underpass with smoke and actinic light. Sable shouted, "What the hell?" One of his men, thinking it was an ambush, pulled a gun. Screech! Evo slammed the sedan in reverse, the tires smoking, smashing lightly into the plateless car behind us just enough to jar it, then threw the gear shift. The engine roared. He spun the wheel, executing a perfect J-turn in the narrow space, the bumper missing the concrete pillar by an inch. Shots rang out, pinging off the concrete. High and wide, they were blind. Ivo just drove. He didn't speed. He just accelerated smoothly into traffic, blending in, leaving the chaos, the smoke, and the sound of men screaming at each other behind us. My heart was beating so fast I thought I might pass out. I was still clutching the door handle. "Breathe, kid," Ivo said, not taking his eyes off the road. "You did good." That night, in the safe house, the burner phone rang. Not the one Sable had the number for. The one Seraphine had given me. It was Parker. His voice was a high-pitched, terrified whine. Maya, oh God, you have to help me." I looked at the phone. The rat was in the trap. "Parker, where are you?" "I don't know a motel outside the city. They think I have it. Maya, they think I have the drive. Halcyon is looking for me. The bureau director, Vale, called me himself. Maya, he said I needed to be a team player. He said he knew I had leverage. I don't have anything." "You have your bank records. Parker," I said, my voice cold. Silence. Then a wet gasp. "You knew Maya. I was in the middle. I just did what they said. They made me. They said they'd hurt my family. Just like you let them threaten mine." What do I do? They're going to find me." This was my part. I looked at the script Seraphine had helped me rehearse. "You have two choices. Parker, you can go to the cops, or you can go to the gala." "The gala? Are you insane? They'll kill me." "You go to the cops. Halcyon kills you before you sign the paperwork. You hide. The bureau finds you and disappears you, or you go to the Night Fen gala. You walk right in. You bring the only thing you have left, the truth. You find Director Vale. You tell him you'll trade the drive for protection, in public, where they can't touch you." It's your only move, Parker. They're waiting." I hung up. The next day, the day of the gala, Seraphine gave me the last piece. It was a simple black button for the blazer she'd provided. "It's a camera," she said, showing me how to twist it into place. "The feed is encrypted, streamed live to a private server. Dante will be watching everything you see." "Dante, he's not coming." "The boss has his own way of making an entrance. Your job is to be the eyes. Get Parker, get Vale, get them talking. The camera does the rest." I spent an hour practicing, walking around the apartment, the tiny lens feeling like a spotlight. Later, Ivo drove me past Greyhaven Public Hospital. "Just a drive-by. I had to see." "They took the bait," he said, nodding toward the entrance. "After you met Sable, he sent 2 of his goons. They went up to Ward 3B. They found an empty room, and 2 of our guys, dressed as orderlies, who told them misses. Quill was discharged into private care due to an anonymous donation." He grinned in the rearview mirror. "Sable knows he was played. He knows the card is fake, and he is very, very angry." We were moving again. The gala was in 3 hours. They were taking me to a final prep location, a hotel suite near the museum. We were using the service entrance of the Carradine building, a shortcut to the parking garage. It happened too fast. We were on the 3rd-floor landing of the steel fire escape. It was raining, the metal steps slick and echoing. Ivo was 10 steps ahead, unlocking the door. A shadow detached itself from the alcove below. "You're a hard woman to find, Maya." "Rex Sable." Ivo spun, but Sable was already on me. He grabbed my arm, yanking me hard, slamming my back against the brick wall, the panic earring. 3 seconds. I fumbled, trying to press it, but he saw the movement. He grabbed my other wrist, his grip like a steel trap. "The earring, clever bay," he sneered, his face inches from mine, smelling of wet wool and rage. The flare, the empty bed, very smart. Now, where is the real drive? "I don't have it," I gasped, twisting. I did what Seraphine had shown me in a training drill, stomped the instep hard. I stomped. He grunted. I slammed my knee up, aiming for his groin. It was clumsy. He was a professional. He turned, taking the blow on his thigh, and shoved me again, harder. My head cracked against the brick. Stars exploded. "Wrong move," he hissed, pulling something dark from his pocket. Not a gun. A knife. "I disagree." The voice came from the shadows above us. On the landing I hadn't yet reached. "Dante." He dropped, landing on the metal steps as silently as a panther. He wasn't wearing a tux. Not yet. He was in black pants and a dark gray Henley that clung to his shoulders. Sable shoved me away, using me as a distraction, and lunged at Dante with the knife. I screamed. Dante didn't dodge. He moved into the attack. He deflected Sable's knife hand, stepping inside the arc of the blade. It was a dance. It was over in a second. There was a sound, a wet, sickening pop, like a thick branch snapping. Sable screamed, a high, thin, agonizing sound. He dropped the knife, which clattered onto the steps. He was clutching his right hand, his arm bent at an angle that arms aren't supposed to bend. Dante hadn't broken the bone. He dislocated it, violently. He'd stepped in, grabbed the wrist and elbow, and used Sable's own momentum to tear the joint from its socket. Rex crumpled, cradling his useless arm, hyperventilating in pain. Dante just looked down at him, his chest barely rising. "Evo, get him out of my sight. Tell him the next time he touches her. He won't have a hand left to beg with." Evo hauled the whimpering Sable to his feet and dragged him down the stairs. The rain hammered on the metal roof above. I was leaning against the wall, my breath shaking. My arm, where he'd grabbed me, was stinging. I looked down, a long, shallow scratch from a piece of metal on the railing. Dante turned to me. His eyes were dark, still carrying the storm of the fight. He saw the scratch. "You're hurt." "It's just a scratch," I stammered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, not a bandage, a pristine, white, linen handkerchief. He stepped close, taking my arm gently. The contrast of his touch, the same hand that had just dismantled a man, was dizzying. He folded the linen into a pad and pressed it firmly against the cut. "A mafia boss who knows advanced first aid," I whispered, my voice shaky, trying to fill the charged silence. He didn't look up from his task. His fingers were wrapping the cloth, securing it. His touch was warm. "I know how to protect what belongs to me," he said, his voice a low rumble. He finished the knot. It was so close. I could smell the rain on his clothes, and something else clean. Expensive soap. Shouting! From the alley below, they're up the stairs. Dante's head snapped up. He looked past me, down the alley. A heavy-duty delivery truck, its lights off, suddenly roared to life. It wasn't delivering anything. It was blocking the alley. No, it was coming. Right for the fire escape supports. "Move!" Dante yelled. He didn't push me toward the door. He grabbed me by the waist. He spun, pulling me against him, shielding me with his own body, pressing us both flat into the shallow alcove of the brick wall. The world dissolved. There was the thunder of the engine, the screech of metal as the truck's fender grazed the staircase supports, shaking the entire structure. Headlights washed over us, blinding white, then gone. And there was Dante. He was a solid wall of heat. My face was pressed into the fabric of his shirt, against the hard muscle of his chest. His arms were a steel cage around me. I could feel his heart. Thump, 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 steady, powerful. The truck roared past, crashing through the chain-link fence at the end of the alley. The sound faded. There was only the rain and the sound of my own breathing, and his. He didn't let go. Not for 1 second, not for 2. He held me there, pinned between the wall and his body. The world had shrunk to this single, breathless, terrifying moment. His head was bent, his face near my hair. I could feel the tension in his arms, the controlled strength that had just saved my life. In that tiny, shared space, the air was electric. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't a rescue. It was something else. The truck was gone. The alley was just an alley again, smelling of wet metal and ozone. The vibration of the impact still thrummed in my bones. Dante hadn't let go. Not for a long time. My face was pressed so hard against his chest I thought I'd leave an imprint. My hands bunched in the fabric of his shirt. He was a furnace. His arms were locked around me, a shield of muscle and bone. When he finally loosened his grip, he didn't step away. He just leaned his head back against the brick, his eyes closed for a single second, breathing hard. The man who had been pure, cold calculation at the warehouse, was breathing like a man who had just run a marathon. He had saved me, again. Ivo had returned, his face grim, and bundled me into the car. The ride to this place was a silent, rain-streaked blur. I didn't know this part of Greyhaven. We hadn't gone to the anonymous high-rise. We'd gone up, past the gated communities, to a single dark tower that seemed to pierce the storm clouds. Now, I was in a place I couldn't have imagined. Rovan House, as Ivo had called it, was a penthouse that took up the entire top floor. It was a fortress of glass and steel, but inside, it was warm. Seraphine had met me, her face impassive. "You're secure here," she'd said. "There's a shower and a change of clothes. The boss will meet you in the main room. We have 2 hours until the final briefing for the gala." I'd stood under the hot water for 20 minutes, washing away the grime of the fire escape, the phantom grip of Rex Sable, the cold terror of the truck. The scratch on my arm was clean, covered by a proper bandage Dante had applied in the car, his touch surprisingly gentle. On the bed in the guest suite, a dress was laid out. It wasn't a cocktail dress. It wasn't a gown. It was a simple, long-sleeved sheath of dark, heavy silk. I slid it on. The fabric was heavy, cool, and settled over my body like armor. It wasn't my threadbare uniform. It wasn't my worn-out jeans. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the waitress from the Lighthouse Diner. Her eyes were tired, yes, but they were old, and they were steady. The dress didn't just fit me. It fit the person I had become in the last 48 hours. I walked out. The main room was vast, lined with books from floor to ceiling. A fireplace dominated one wall, casting a warm, yellow light that battled the cold blue of the city lights outside. The rain was a soft, percussive tap-tap-tap against the enormous windows. A heavy, antique clock on the mantel ticked, a slow, steady heartbeat. He was there, standing by the window, looking down at the city he owned. Dante. He wasn't the boss. He wasn't the fighter from the alley. He was something in between. He'd changed, too. He wore no jacket, no tie, just dark pants and a gray button-down. The sleeves rolled up his forearms. He was holding a short glass of something amber, but he wasn't drinking it. He turned as I entered. His gaze moved over me. Just once. It wasn't a leer. It was an assessment. He saw the dress, the determination I was wearing like a shield. His eyes, usually so cold and controlled, were drawn. He was trying to keep his distance, but the man from the fire escape, the one who had held me, was still there. I saw his hand, the one resting on the back of a leather chair. On the back, near the knuckles, was a raw, red scratch, the one he'd gotten saving me. He broke the silence. His voice was low, the gravelly rumble I'd first heard at the diner. "There is one last offer, Maya." I waited. "Seraphine has a plane fueled at a private airfield. She can have you on it in 1 hour. A new name, a passport, an account with enough money to live comfortably, anywhere in the world." My heart stuttered. An escape, a real one. "My people will care for Etta," he continued, watching me. "We will handle Noah's exoneration. We have the drive. Your part, it's done. You've given us the weapon. You don't have to be there when it fires. No one would blame you if you left. After tonight, after Sable." He was giving me an out, the final door. All I had to do was walk through it. I thought of my old apartment. I thought of the shaking hands, counting quarters. I thought of Noah, bewildered in that courtroom. I thought of the fear. I was so tired of the fear. I walked toward him, stopping in the center of the room, in the warm light from the fire. "I'm tired of running, Dante." He didn't move, but his focus on me sharpened. "I've been running my whole life, running from bills, running from threats, running from the truth. If I run now, I'll never stop. You told me to bring my courage. This is it." I took a breath. "I'm not leaving. I choose to stand. I want to see this through. I want to be there when the lights come on." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty. It was filled by the ticking of the clock, the hiss of the fire, the steady drum of the rain. It was the sound of a decision settling. He looked at me, really looked at me, and he nodded. He took one step toward me. The space between us was electric, that rain-soaked wire from the outline. It hummed. He stopped, 2 feet away. He didn't reach for me. He just waited. He was giving me the final choice, the power. He wouldn't take it. I had to give it. My heart was hammering, but not with fear, with something else, something new and terrifyingly strong. I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, my silent consent. He closed the distance. His hand came up, not to grab me, not to pull me in. He placed it, warm and heavy, on my shoulder, a grounding touch. It wasn't a gesture of possession. It was a gesture of respect. And then he kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, frantic kiss of a movie. It wasn't the crash of the truck. It was slow. It was deep. It was unhurried. It was a question, an exploration, and an answer all at once. I realized the first truly gentle thing that had happened to me in years. It was respect. I didn't kiss him back with hunger. I kissed him back with acceptance. I lifted my own hand, the one with the bandage. I didn't touch his face. I didn't wrap my arms around his neck. I reached for his hand, the one that had saved me. I turned it over and lightly, deliberately, touched my fingertips to the raw, red scratch on his knuckles. He flinched, just a fraction, a sharp intake of breath against my lips, but I didn't pull away. I kept my fingers there. "I'm here. I see you. I see the violence. I'm not afraid." His other arm came around me then, sliding around my back, pulling me closer. The kiss deepened. The warmth from the fireplace suddenly irrelevant. A different kind of heat was spreading through me, slow and insistent, like a furnace kicking on in a cold house. It wasn't the flash fire of adrenaline. It was a deep, penetrating warmth. The layers of armor I'd worn for years, the sarcasm, the exhaustion, the fear they weren't being ripped away. They were just melting. He broke the kiss, but he didn't move away. He rested his forehead against mine. We stood there, breathing the same air. His chest rose and fell, and I felt my own breathing, ragged and fast, begin to slow, matching his rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. My eyes were closed. I was anchored. "Safe," he whispered. The word was a rumble against my skin. It wasn't a question. It was a promise. "I trust you," I whispered back. And I knew, as I said it, that it was the truth, the most dangerous, liberating truth I'd ever spoken. His arms tightened, pulling me into a full embrace. This wasn't the desperate, bone-crushing grip from the fire escape. This was supportive. This was strong. He held me as if I were something precious, something he had fought for. I could feel his heart beating steadily against mine, in the shadow, with his head bent toward mine. I thought I saw the corner of his mouth lift, a small, private smile in the darkness. The warmth was building. The tension in the room had changed from strategic to something deeply personal. It was a current, pulling us somewhere new. I pulled my head back, just an inch, enough to see his face, his dark eyes watching me. "I want to remember tonight," I said, my voice barely audible, "as the moment we began, not as the night we were escaping." He looked at me for a long time, the general, the boss, the fighter, and then he smiled. It was a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes, chasing the shadows away for just a second. "Then we begin," he said. He held me for one more long, conscious, warm moment. It was a hug that was an agreement, a silent contract. Then, slowly, he stepped back, letting his arms drop. He was the boss again, but not entirely. I was the waitress, but not entirely. We had separated, but we were connected. We were two halves of a strategy, ready for the gala. But now, we were also two halves of an emotional code, a secret that only we knew. The war was tomorrow, but tonight, we had this. The 24 hours after that moment in the penthouse were a silent, charged stillness, the air before a lightning strike. We were two halves of a plan, and now, something else. Something undefined and fragile, held together by shared danger and a single, desperate kiss. The Night Fen Gala was another world. I had stepped out of Dante's car, not as Maya Quill, Waitress, but as a ghost he was sliding into the machine. The air at the museum entrance wasn't just cold, it was heavy, weighted down by the smell of old money, expensive perfume, and the kind of quiet corruption that doesn't need to shout. The grand hall was drowned in champagne-colored light. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, dripping light onto men and women who moved with a frictionless grace. They were all beautiful, all polished, all smiling with their teeth. I'd spent my life scrubbing grease from counters, and here, they were hiding their own kind of grime under $1,000 tuxedos and silk dinner napkins. The simple dark dress Seraphine had given me, the one that had felt like armor in Dante's study, now felt like the perfect camouflage. I was a shadow, and this room was full of blinding, artificial light. My button camera, the little black dot on my blazer, felt like a 50-pound weight. I touched it, the signal for live. I was broadcasting. Everything I saw, Dante's nest saw. It wasn't hard to find my first target. Director Richard Vale was at the podium, his silver hair catching the light, the man who had put my brother Noah away, the man who had looked at me in court as if I were a piece of gum on his shoe. "The Meridian Bureau," he said, his voice resonating with false sincerity, "is a promise of integrity. We are the bulwark against the forces that seek to erode the public trust. We are the guardians of this city's soul." I aimed my body right at him, my camera drinking in the lie. I hoped Dante could see the hypocrisy. I hoped it burned. My second target was harder to spot. I scanned the perimeter, near the service entrances, my heart doing a nervous little tap dance. And then I saw him. Parker. He was a wreck. He was stuffed into a black waiter's uniform that was 2 sizes too big, sweat already plastering his thin hair to his forehead. He looked like a mouse who had just realized he'd RSVP'd to a convention of owls. He saw me. His eyes went wide, and he immediately ducked through a set of double doors marked kitchen. I saw them, too. 2 men in suits that were just a little too sharp, a little too tight, detached themselves from a conversation and followed him. Halcyon's muscle. They were taking the bait. I drifted toward the door, pretending to look at a grotesque ice sculpture. Through the round porthole window, I saw the scene play out exactly as Dante had predicted. Parker, his hands shaking so violently he looked like he had a fever, accidentally fumbled a tray. As he bent to clean the mess, he slid the dummy micro SD card under the leg of a massive steel prep table. The Halcyon men saw it. They didn't grab it. They just shared a thin smile and backed away, disappearing. They'd let him think he was clever. They were letting the rat run, just to see which hole he'd run to. I turned from the door, my stomach churning, and I froze. Director Vale had finished his speech. He was standing near the silent auction tables, and he was talking, in a low, intimate whisper, to Rex Sable. Sable, his right arm was in a sleek, black medical sling, barely visible against his tuxedo. His face was pale, gleaming with a fine layer underscore of pain sweat. His empty, pale eyes were fixed on Vale. He was nodding. The head of the bulwark against darkness, the guardian of the city's soul, whispering strategy with the man who had dislocated his own shoulder, trying to knife me on a fire escape. They weren't 2 opposing forces. They were 2 departments of the same dirty company. They shared a wallet. I stared, making sure my camera got every second of it. Got you. As if summoned by the sheer weight of corruption. The main doors of the gala opened again. The low hum of conversation in the room stuttered, like a tape deck catching. Dante Roven had arrived. He wasn't the man in the rain-soaked coat from the diner. He wasn't the man in the Henley from the penthouse. This was someone else entirely. He wore a black suit, custom-tailored, fitting him with the precision of a surgeon's glove. He didn't just wear the suit, he commanded it. He walked into that room of wolves as if he were the zookeeper, and they were all about to be fed. At his side, Ivo was a walking mountain range in a tuxedo. In his left hand, Dante carried a single, hard-shell black briefcase. It looked solid, heavy, and expensive. He held it with an easy, casual grip, as if he were a musician arriving with his sheet music. He didn't look at me, and he didn't look at Vale. He just moved, an island of absolute calm in the nervous sea, to a reserved table near the front. My burner phone vibrated in my tiny silk pocket, a secure text, DR. In the briefcase is what they want and what they fear. I looked up, and he was watching the auctioneer. Not me, but he knew. A complete paper ledger of every transaction from Centurion Bankworks for the last 5 years, the text continued, and a mirrored encrypted hard drive, the originals. My God, Noah's card wasn't just insurance, it was the key. Dante had just walked into the lion's den carrying the lion. The auctioneer, a man with a booming voice and a plastic smile, was trying to sell a week-long stay at a villa. Do I hear 80,000 for paradise? The lights dimmed slightly. Focusing on the stage, the classical music swelled. And then it stopped. Abruptly, the speakers crackled. A new voice filled the room. It was digitized, female, and cold as ice. Seraphine. We interrupt this auction for a new collection, the voice announced. The two massive projection screens on either side of the stage, the ones that had been showing slides of the villa, flickered and changed. They displayed what looked like a piece of abstract, digital art, a complex web of moving lines and nodes. Our first piece, Seraphine's voiceover cooed, is titled Disbursement, and as you can see, it features a bold line representing a transfer of $800,000 moving from a Halcyon Ring Shell Corporation through Centurion Bankworks and resting right here in the Night Fen Charity Fund. The room went absolutely silent. You could have heard a sold sticker drop. A generous, if anonymous, donation, Seraphine said. The image changed, a new painting. This one was simpler. This piece is consulting fee, she said. A striking, minimalist work. A direct transfer of $75,000 from the Meridian Bureau's confidential informant fund to Mr. Rex Sable for security services. A lovely, recurring piece, paid out monthly. Sable, across the room, looked like he'd been shot. Vale was on his feet. His face, usually so composed, was a mottled, furious red. Shut it down, he bellowed at the tech booth. Shut it down, kill the projectors. Cut the house lights now. The screens went black. The room plunged into darkness. A woman screamed. People were shouting, confused, panicked. For a single, long second, there was only the green and red glow of the emergency exit signs. Then whirr. A pinprick of light appeared on the high, vaulted ceiling. Then another and another. 4 of them. Tiny drones. They had been nested in the darkness of the rafters. Now they were alive. Their microprojectors flared, and the art exhibit was back, splashed across the vast white canvas of the ceiling. Seraphine wasn't in their system. She was the system. This was my cue. In the chaos, as people stared at the ceiling, I moved. I saw Parker. He was trying to bolt, scrambling out of the kitchen, his face a mask of pure terror. He was heading for a fire exit. I grabbed his arm. Parker. He spun, shrieking, nearly falling over. My God, did you see? They know, Parker, I hissed, shoving him toward a side door marked storage. They know you're the link. Vale thinks you're selling him to Halcyon. Halcyon thinks you've been a bureau rat all along. You're the one they both want dead. I'm not, he sobbed, stumbling into the dark, narrow room. It smelled of bleach and old linens. I followed him in and shut the door. cutting off the noise of the panicking gala. We were in near total darkness, lit only by the red glow of the exit sign bleeding under the door. "You have one choice," I said, my voice hard, my camera recording his breakdown. "You're a dead man. You can die in here as a pawn, or you can live as a witness. You have to choose. Right now, tell me." He collapsed. He slid down the wall, burying his face in his hands. "I didn't know what to do," he wailed. "It was halcyon, first years ago. They knew I was skimming the register, just small amounts. They said they'd look the other way. I just had to watch. Tell them who was talking to cops, who was asking questions. And Director Vale I pushed. He found out, he knew, he used that to trap me. 2, he said I had to be a good citizen. He said I had to report on Halcyon to him. He said he'd protect me. And then they sent me pictures of my wife, my kids at the playground. They said they'd keep them safe as long as I was helpful." The door to the storage room opened. Parker screamed, a high, thin sound. Dante Rovan stepped inside. He was holding the black briefcase. Evo was behind him, a shadow that filled the doorway. He closed the door. Dante looked at Parker, who was trembling on the floor. He looked at me, then at my button camera. He gave a single, slight nod. Testimony secured. "Mr. Hume," Dante said. His voice was quiet, calm, but it filled the small room. "You seem to be in a difficult position." He placed the black briefcase on a metal shelf. Click, click. The sound of the 2 main latches popping open was louder than a gunshot. He opened the lid just an inch, tilting it so Parker could see inside. I saw it, too. Thick, leather-bound ledgers, the physical paper trail, and nestled in black, precision-cut foam, a single silver hard drive. "This," Dante said, "is the truth. It's what they're all fighting for. You have just confirmed its validity. You are now the single most valuable witness in Greyhaven." He looked at the sobbing man on the floor. "You have 2 options. You walk out that door alone, and you will not make it to the street. Or you walk out that door with me, and you live." Parker stared at the case, his breath catching. Dante smiled, that cold, sharp wolf smile. He slowly closed the lid of the briefcase, but he didn't snap the latches shut. He left the final, central combination lock unfastened. He left the entire war, all the proof, all the power, sitting on a shelf in a dark room unsecured, awaiting bomb, a final, climactic temptation. Parker was staring at the unlatched briefcase, his breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. The air in the tiny, dark storage room was thick with his confession and the smell of bleach. He was a rat, and Dante had just laid out the ultimate piece of cheese, the very evidence that could destroy his masters, or perhaps, in his terrified mind, buy his freedom. He didn't move. He was too broken. I'll go with you," he finally whimpered, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Please, my family." He said, Sable said. Dante nodded once, a sharp, final gesture. He slowly closed the lid of the briefcase. He didn't snap the main latches. He didn't spin the combination dial. He just left it, that central lock still unfastened. He picked it up. "Evo, take Mr. Hume." Evo, who had been a mountain of silent judgment in the doorway, stepped in. He grabbed Parker's arm, hauling him to his feet like a sack of damp laundry. Parker didn't resist. He was a puppet whose strings had been cut. Dante held the case. I held my breath, my button camera aimed steady. We were a strange procession, the king, the pawn, the ghost, and the mountain. Dante opened the door. Chaos! The grand hall had transformed. The panic from Seraphine's art exhibit was nothing. This was new. This was visceral. Thump. A dull, heavy concussion from the direction of the kitchens, followed by a metallic crash. A woman screamed, a high, thin sound that cut through the alarm. Then the smell hit us. It wasn't smoke, it was acrid. Chemical, pepper, tear gas. "Halcyon," Dante said, his voice a flat, cold line. He didn't even raise it. "They're flushing the building. They think Parker is still hiding in the kitchen." He was right. A wave of tuxedoed guests and uniformed kitchen staff poured out of the service doors, coughing, weeping, their eyes streaming. The elegant gala had become a stampede. This way, men in dark blue windbreakers, Meridian Bureau emblazoned on the back, were shouting, but they weren't guiding people to safety. They were directing. "Sir, you need to come with us, now." I saw one of them grab a city councilman who I knew was one of Vale's political rivals. "I'm fine, I just need air." "You're being detained for your own safety," the agent said, shoving him toward an exit where 2 other agents were waiting. They weren't making arrests. They were using the panic as a cover. They were grabbing their enemies, settling scores and cleaning house, all under the guise of a public emergency. It was a performance, a sickening, familiar play. "Ivo," Dante said. Ivo shoved Parker and me into a small alcove, next to a fire control panel. "Stay, here." His voice was a low growl. He pulled a small, black device from his pocket, no bigger than a phone. He slammed it against the security panel's lock. A red light on the panel flickered, then turned green. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my heart hammering. "The boss wants everyone to see this." Ivo grunted. He tapped his earpiece, a gesture I now recognized. "Seraphine, we're live to the world. Go?" My blood went cold. He'd just bypassed the museum security feed. He'd given Seraphine control. My button cam, the museum's own cameras, everything was being streamed, not just to Dante's server, to the public, to the 3 independent news channels he'd mentioned. Ivo turned back to us. "We move now. West Wing exit." We plunged back into the river of panicked people, moving against the current. Dante was in front, the briefcase in one hand, using his body to clear a path. Ivo was behind, one hand on Parker's shoulder, the other on my back, pushing me forward. We rounded a corner, away from the gas, into a long, opulent corridor, the Hall of Reflections. Both walls were covered in antique mirrors, floor to ceiling, creating an infinite, repeating maze of panicked faces. And he was there, waiting. Rex Sable. His right arm was in that same black sling, but his left hand was rock steady, holding a heavy, black pistol. He wasn't alone. 2 halcyon thugs, the ones I'd seen follow Parker into the kitchen, flanked him. Their guns were out, too. "Going somewhere, Rovan," Sable sneered. His face was pale and slick with sweat. His eyes were not the eyes of a professional. They were the eyes of a rabid dog, high on pain and pure, uncut rage. Ivo shoved me behind him, his own weapon appearing in his hand as if by magic. Dante stopped. He put himself in front of me, in front of all of us. "Rex," Dante said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Shut up," Sable shrieked, the sound echoing off the mirrors. "You broke my arm. You played me. You played me." He was desperate. His eyes darted from Dante to Ivo and then to Parker. He saw his leverage. He lunged. It was impossibly fast for an injured man. He ignored me. He ignored Dante. He grabbed Parker by the front of his waiter's jacket, yanking him out from behind Ivo. He jammed the barrel of his pistol against Parker's temple. "Drop it!" Sable screamed, his voice cracking. He was aiming at Ivo. "Drop it, or the rat gets a third eye, I swear to God." Ivo froze. His face was a mask of thunder. He was calculating the odds. Dante held up one hand, a quiet signal. "Stand down." "He's worthless to you, Rex," Dante said, his voice reasonable. "He's my ticket," Sable spat, dragging Parker backward. "And she," he nodded at me, his eyes full of venom. "She's my bonus. Give me the case. Give me her. And you and your mountain can walk away." I stared, my body locked in ice. My camera, I was streaming this. I was broadcasting Parker's execution. I could see the gun press so hard into Parker's skin that it left a white circle. I could see the faint tremor in Sable's hand. He wasn't in control. He was a cornered animal, 1 second from pulling that trigger. Dante didn't move. He looked at Sable, and he looked at the gun. He looked at me. Then, slowly, he walked forward. He placed the black briefcase on the polished marble floor, right in the center of the mirrored hallway. He slid it. It spun once, then glided across the floor, stopping a perfect 5 feet in front of Sable. The unfastened central lock was facing him, a silent invitation. "Let them go," Dante said. His hands were empty, held slightly away from his body, palms open. "Take what you want, the case, the drive, it's all there." Sable laughed. It was a high-pitched, broken, terrible sound. "You think I'm that stupid? You think I'll bend over and let your man shoot me in the back?" He yanked Parker's head back by the hair. Parker gave a small, pitiful squeak. "No, you, Roven." Sable's eyes were glittering. "I want you to kick it over to me, on your knees." The hallway was so quiet I could hear the hiss of the gas from the main hall. Evo was a coiled spring. "On your knees, Rovan now, or he dies." Dante looked at him. The man who had walked into the gala like he owned the air. The man who had held me in the penthouse. "I don't kneel," he said. It was a statement of fact, and it was a death sentence for Parker. Sable's finger tightened. Then "But I'll get the case," Dante said, cutting him off. He took a half step forward. He crouched, his body tensing, but his knees stayed off the floor. He reached out one hand, his long fingers stretching, and he rested his fingertips, just barely, on the unfastened combination lock. It was a signal. Pop, 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 pop. It wasn't gunfire. It was the lights. The elegant, expensive track lighting in the ceiling exploded, one after another, in a shower of glass and sparks. The mirrored hall was plunged into absolute, perfect darkness. Hey! A new sound, from the air vents above, thick, white. Odorless smoke poured into the corridor. It wasn't the pepper gas. This was a clean, dense, theatrical fog. It was a wall of white, swallowing everything. "Maya now?" It was Dante's roar. I didn't think I reacted. I grabbed the front of Parker's jacket, the one Sable was holding, and I didn't pull back. I pulled down. Parker, a dead weight, fell from Sable's loosened grip. We crashed to the marble floor in a heap. I jammed my hand against my left ear, my fingers fumbling for the stud. I pressed. My heart was a drum. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Bang! A single, wild gunshot. The muzzle flash was a blinding yellow flower in the smoke. Shouting, a thud, the sound of a body hitting a wall, a high-pitched scream, cut short, a zap, the sharp, electric sound of a high-voltage stun gun. A dark shape, Evo, was a phantom in the fog, moving with the speed of a freight train. Another shape, impossibly fast, was a blur to my left. Seraphine. She must have come from the other end. She was on Sable. Twisting his good wrist, I heard a snap. The gun clattered to the floor. Strong, warm hands were on me. "I have you." Dante. He was hauling me to my feet, pulling me against his side. His arm a steel bar around my waist. He was dragging me backward, out of the smoke. His other hand, he had the briefcase. He'd never let it go. "Vale, he's running," Seraphine's voice, sharp and clear. We were at the end of the hall. The smoke was beginning to clear. Evo had Sable on his stomach, his hands being zip-tied. Seraphine had Parker, who was just sitting on the floor, weeping. Down the other end of the corridor, near the main entrance, we saw him, Director Richard Vale. He'd ripped his name badge off. He was sprinting, shoving panicked guests aside. He wasn't running toward his own men. He was running for a side exit. Exit C3. He slammed his shoulder against the crash bar. The door flew open. He looked back, just once, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. Clang, rattle, boom! A heavy, corrugated steel fire door slammed down from the ceiling. It wasn't a system malfunction. It was triggered. Vale was trapped. He slammed his fists against the solid steel. He was caught in a small, glass-walled atrium, locked out of the exit, locked away from the party. And as he turned, his face pale, he saw it. One of the small, black drones from the main hall. It had detached from the exhibit. It was floating, perfectly silent, 3 feet from his face. Its tiny, red recording light was on. He was trapped, and he was live. The smoke was clearing. The remaining guests were silent, staring at Vale, at us. Dante was the picture of calm. He walked back into the center of the hall, his shoes clicking on the marble. He looked at me. A clear, direct look. He was looking at my button camera. He was addressing the stream. He set the black briefcase on a marble bench. "Director Vale," he said, his voice projecting into the sudden, stunned silence, was trying to retrieve this. He reached down, he turned the unfastened central lock. Click. He opened the case. He didn't have to say a word. My camera was zoomed in. The drone by Vale's head swiveled, capturing the briefcase's contents. The thick paper ledgers, the silver hard drive, and one more thing, sitting right on top. A single, official-looking document. It had the embossed seal of the Atlas Integrity Commission. It was a pre-signed, blank immunity from prosecution form, a get-out-of-jail-free card. At the bottom, in hurried, angry ink, was a signature. Richard Vale. My blood froze. It was a plant, a fake, the final, perfect piece of the trap. Dante wasn't just catching him for his past crimes. He was catching him, red-handed, in this moment, trying to forge his own pardon to escape the building. He was trying to save himself, Dante said, his voice cold. The gala hall, with its shattered lights and smoky air, wasn't a party anymore. It was a courtroom, and Dante had just presented Exhibit A to the entire city. The lie was exposed. The hall was a stunned, silent theater of smoke and shattered glass. Vale was trapped in the atrium. The little drone, a silent, recording angel in his face. He didn't surrender. Men like Vale never surrender. They just find another exit. He looked up. In the ceiling of the small atrium, I saw it too, a metal panel, a service access ladder. He threw his shoulder against the other door, the exit C3 door he'd been aiming for. It burst open, leading into a dark, concrete service corridor. He scrambled through. "He's going for the roof." Dante's voice was low, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. A scream from across the hall. "He's loose!" I spun. Evo was trying to secure the 2 Halcyon thugs. Rex Sable, his face a mask of purple rage, was back on his feet. The stun gun had worn off, or he'd willed it away. He'd used the chaos to slip the zip ties. He had a knife. A different one, a backup. Dante was already moving toward the bench, snatching the black briefcase. He snapped the latches shut. "Maya, move." Sable wasn't going for Dante. He was coming for me. "You!" he shrieked, his voice raw. "This is all you!" He lunged, the blade flashing. He was between me and Dante. He was all animal, all rage. Dante roared my name. But I'd been trained for this. In the safe house, Evo had spent an hour, his voice a bored rumble. "If they're faster, use the environment. A door is a weapon, a frame is a vice." I didn't run. I didn't scream. I stepped back, yanking the heavy steel fire door the one Vale had just burst through closed. Sable, in his blind lunge, was too fast. He tried to pull back, but I slammed the door with all my weight. Slam! The sound was followed by a wet, sickening crunch. He screamed, a sound I will never, ever forget. It wasn't a roar of rage. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. I'd slammed the door on his good hand, the one holding the knife. The knife clattered to the floor. Sable crumpled, his left hand completely mangled, trapped in the door jamb. He was finished. Evo was there a second later, his boot on Sable's back. He looked at the door, at Sable's destroyed hand, then at me. A flash of something respect. "Good, kid." Dante didn't pause. He grabbed my hand. "Come on, he's calling for extraction." He pulled me through the door, over Sable's whimpering body, and into the service corridor. The little drone that had been on Vale was a red dot in the darkness ahead. A guide. We hit the stairwell. It was a different world. No crystal, no music. Just bare concrete and humming fluorescent lights. We ran. My heels. The ones I'd worn to be a ghost were a liability. I kicked them off. Up, 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 ah. The air grew colder. My lungs burned. Dante was a machine, pulling me along, the briefcase in his other hand. His grip was like iron. All I could hear was the slap of my bare feet on the concrete, the metallic clang of his shoes, and our ragged, shared breathing, which smelled like the air itself, like metal and cold, and the sudden sharp scent of rain. He kicked the bar on the roof access door. We burst out into a hurricane. The roof of the Opaline Center was a war zone. The rain wasn't falling, it was attacking. Driven by a wind that screamed, the city was a galaxy of glittering lights, spread out below us, indifferent. And the helicopter? It was a sleek, black machine. Maybe a civilian model, but it was painted in matte, non-reflective paint. It wasn't landing, it was hovering. Its skids just 3 or 4 feet above the helipad, fighting the wind. The downdraft was a physical blow, plastering my dress to my body, whipping my hair into my eyes. Vale was there, soaked, his perfect silver hair a mess. He was at the edge of the pad, screaming at the pilot. "Get down, I have the package, get down." He was bluffing, trying to make the pilot land. "Dante," he shrieked. Seeing us, he pulled a radio from his pocket. "The case, give me the case, or I'll have Parker killed. I mean it, kill the rat, do it." He was bluffing. He had to be. The wind tore at my voice, but I screamed back. "It's too late. Vale Parker isn't yours anymore. He's talking, the whole city is watching you, we're live." My button camera, it was still streaming. My view, this rooftop, this nightmare, was being broadcast to the world. Vale's face, illuminated by the helicopter's strobe, was a mask of pure desperation. He knew it. The bluff had failed. He had one move left. He made a desperate, scrambling run, trying to jump onto the helicopter's skid. A flash of red, a laser dot. It appeared on Dante's chest. A sniper. On the next building over, a Halcyon contingency plan, the last piece of the puzzle. They weren't just here to support Vale. They were here to make sure no one else left. Dante saw Vale's jump. He acted. He didn't run. He didn't shoot. He threw the briefcase. It was a perfect spinning arc, cutting through the wind and rain. It landed hard on the open deck of the helicopter, just behind the cockpit. Vale was scrambling onto the skid, reaching for it. But the case, damaged from Sable's fight, or maybe just from the impact, popped open. A cloud of paper, the ledgers, exploded into the downdraft, a meaningless, rain-soaked confetti, scattered to the winds, useless. But the hard drive, the small, silver, encrypted hard drive, Noah's insurance, my weapon, the real truth skittered out. It bounced on the wet metal deck, spun across the helipad, and rolled to a stop, right between my bare feet. The sniper's dot was still on Dante. Vale was halfway into the helicopter. I was standing over the key to the entire city. It all happened in 1 second. I saw the dot. I didn't think. I yelled his name. "Dante!" I threw myself at him, a clumsy, desperate shove. Crack-spang. The sound of the shot was thin in the wind. The bullet hit exactly where he had been standing. It struck a metal antenna array, and a shower of white-hot sparks erupted into the rain. Dante, knocked off balance by my push, grabbed me, pulling us both down behind a massive, humming air conditioning unit. The wind screamed over our heads. "Are you hit?" he yelled, his voice a roar. His hands were on my arms, my face, his eyes searching mine in the dark. No, the drive, I had scooped it up. It was cold and heavy in my hand. Vale was screaming at the pilot. "Go, go! He's shooting! Go!" The helicopter started to rise. The sniper was reloading. We were pinned. Dante didn't pull a gun. He reached into his suit jacket, past the gun I knew was there, and pulled out a small, black handheld speaker, a bullhorn. He clicked it on, a high-pitched squeal. He held it up, over the top of the AC unit, aiming it at the helicopter's cockpit. And he pressed play. First, Seraphine's cold, digital voice amplified into the storm. $800,000, moving from a Halcyon Ring Shell Corporation and resting right here in the Nightfen Charity Fund. Then, Parker's terrified, weeping confession. He said he'd protect me. He said they sent me pictures of my wife, my kids. The sound was a raw, distorted wound in the night. It cut through the rain. It was aimed at the pilot. Vale, halfway in the door, froze. He looked back, his face a perfect picture of horror. He knew that voice. The helicopter stopped rising. It just hovered, 10 feet up. The pilot, he wasn't Halcyon. He was a charter, a civilian, and he was listening. Then, a new voice, not from Dante's speaker. This one came from the helicopter itself, from its external P system. This is the Atlas Integrity Commission. All aircraft in this airspace are to stand down. Director Vale, you are under arrest. The real Atlas. They'd been listening to Evo's stream. They were the cavalry. The helicopter's floodlight snapped on, pinning Vale in its beam. The sniper dot vanished. The backup was gone. And the helicopter, with a terrifying professional smoothness, tilted. The pilot wasn't trying to shake Vale. He was just dumping him. Vale scrambled, lost his grip, and slid off the skid. He fell, maybe 4 or 5 feet, landing in a wet, ignoble heap on the concrete. He was a puddle of ambition and expensive tailoring. He didn't get up. He just lay there, the rain pounding on his back. He was broken. Not by a bullet, not by a fist. He was chained by the truth. The helicopter rose, its spotlight staying on Vale, and began to circle. In the distance, the sirens were no longer threats. They were a response. The roof was quiet. Just for a second, the rain, the wind, the distant city. Dante stood up. He walked over, looked down at the broken man, and then walked back to me. He looked at the silver hard drive in my hand. "It's not over," he said, his voice quiet. "He's caught. But the data, it's still locked. The city is watching. But they only have our word. They're watching us." He nodded at the drive. "The files are still yours. Maya. The final lock. You have to be the one to open it. You have to be the one to press send." I looked at the drive. My brother's life. My grandmother's. Mine. I pulled out the burner phone Seraphine had given me. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. I plugged the drive into the adapter. The screen lit up, a simple prompt. Distribute AIC, press row, public, all. A single button, send. I looked at Vale. I looked at the city lights. I looked at Dante. I pressed send. The screen flashed, uploading. Sent. In the city below, I could almost feel it. A million phones, lighting up, a million screens, all telling the same story, the truth. Dante walked over to the empty, broken briefcase. He picked it up, the rain streaming off it. He snapped it shut. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was just a box. The day after the storm was unnervingly quiet. I'd spent the dawn in the glass fortress of the Rovan house, watching the sun rise over a city that had been fundamentally broken and reset. I hadn't slept. I'd just watched as my single send command, that digital button press from the rooftop, bloomed across the network. The morning news wasn't just covering the story. The story was the news. It was an avalanche. The Nightfen conspiracy. One channel blared. Director Vale arrested, implicated in vast racketeering scheme. The hard drive, Noah's drive, had been a scalpel. The Atlas Integrity Commission, the real one, energized and armed with my data drop, had moved before dawn. They weren't just investigating, they were cleansing. They had raided 3 separate Meridian Bureau offices, and Director Vale's entire inner circle was in custody. The Halcyon Ring, the branch that had owned my neighborhood, had simply evaporated. With their Meridian protection gone and their bank accounts frozen by the Centurion Bankworks leak, they had dissolved overnight. Their power was a house of cards, and we had pulled out the bottom one. And Parker Hume, I saw his face, blurry, on the screen. He was being led into a federal building, a coat over his head. The chyron read, "Key witness Parker Hume in protective custody." He was a rat, yes, but he was a rat who had finally told the truth. And he was going to live. The storm was over. The first phone call I made wasn't to Dante. It was to the new, clean hotline for the Atlas Commission. A woman with a crisp, kind voice answered, "Miss Quill, yes, we've been expecting your call." "My brother," I said, my voice thick, "Noah." "We reviewed his case file as a matter of priority. Using the data you provided, a judge issued a provisional release for Mr. Noah Quill just 1 hour ago. His case is being fully exonerated." I sat down, hard, on the cold marble floor of Dante's penthouse. The phone slipped from my hand. I just cried, gasping. Ugly sobs. It was over. Noah was free. The second call was to St. Mirren's Clinic. "Mrs. Etta," the nurse chirped. "Oh, she's having a wonderful morning. We've moved her to the Glenora wing. The room has a marvelous view of the gardens. She's asking when you'll be by with her ginger ale." A room with a garden. 2 days later, I was back where it started. The Lighthouse Diner. The chains were gone. The closed sign was gone. The owners, a family from the old neighborhood, had reopened. The air was the same. It smelled of coffee that had been on the burner for about 4 hours too long, and bleach, and frying onions. But everything was different. I was different. I grabbed a piece of cardboard and a thick black marker from behind the counter. I wrote 2 words on it: "Now hiring." I taped it to the front window. A new start. I was wiping down the counter, the familiar, comforting motion, when the bell jingled. Ding-a-ling. My heart didn't jump. It didn't seize in panic. It just settled. He slid onto the same stool. Just Dante. No Evo, no Seraphine, no convoy. He wore the black overcoat, but it was dry. The rain just a memory. "Maya," he said. "Dante." "Coffee," he said, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Black. No sugar." I poured. My hand was perfectly, absolutely steady. He slid the black briefcase onto the stool next to him, the one that had held the fate of the city. It looked smaller in the daylight, almost innocent. "I promised I'd return this," he said. I frowned. "The drive is with Atlas. The ledgers, I saw them scatter in the wind." "The wind that night was strange," he said, a faint, private smile on his face. "My people are very good at following the wind, but no, this is for you." He opened it. The custom-cut foam was gone. The hard drive was gone. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark, midnight blue velvet, were 2 things: a folded silk scarf, the color of the night sky, and a small, antique, iron key. My breath caught. "What is this?" "An apartment," he said, watching me, "on Glenora Street, 3 blocks from St. Mirren's. It's on the 10th floor. It has a balcony. It's safe." He paused. "It's in your name. The deed was finalized this morning." I stared at the key. A penthouse in the sky. A golden cage. He was giving me a reward. He was paying me for my service. The old Maya, the one who counted quarters, would have wept with gratitude. But I wasn't her. I pushed the briefcase, gently, back toward him. "I can't." His smile faded. His eyes, those midnight harbor eyes, sharpened. "Maya, it's a gift. It's not—" "I know what it is," I said, my voice low but strong. "It's generous, but I'm done being a pawn, Dante, even a well-protected one. I'm done being given things." I met his gaze, the man who had faced down snipers, the man who had torn another man's arm from its socket, and I wasn't afraid. "I'll take the apartment," I said, "but on my terms. I'll sign a lease. I will pay you rent. Every month, I will have my own key, not one that comes in a box." He was silent for a long, long time. The diner hummed around us. He was seeing me, not the girl who'd said, "You look lost," not the terrified victim. He was seeing the woman who had stood on a rooftop and hit send. "And," I said, my voice softening, "if you want to visit, you ring the bell. You don't just appear. You're a guest." He stared at me. Then, slowly, a real smile broke across his face. It wasn't the sharp, predatory grin. It was real. It reached his eyes. "Elise," he said. "Rent," ringing the bell. He picked up his coffee cup and took a sip. "All right, Miss Quill." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But I'm a terrible guest. I'm told I'll be punctual. And I'll probably bring flowers." I laughed. It felt strange. It felt good. We left the diner. We walked, not to a black sedan, but just walked. We went to the harbor line, the long seawall that overlooked the bay. The sky was a brilliant, sharp blue. The air was salty and clean. He reached for my hand. He didn't grab it. He didn't seize it. He just offered his palm up. A question. I slipped my hand into his. He didn't lace his fingers tightly, like a man staking a claim. He just held it, his thumb brushing lightly over my knuckles. He was walking with me. He was matching my pace. We found a wooden bench, worn smooth by the salt and the wind, and sat facing the water. The silence was easy. "You've changed, Maya," he said, looking at our joined hands. "So have you," I whispered. "You look younger." "I feel older," he said, but he was smiling. He turned to me. The world fell away. There were no snipers, no hard drives, no conspiracies. There was just him. He leaned in. I met him halfway. This kiss was the one. It wasn't the desperate, rain-soaked kiss of respect in the penthouse. It wasn't the shadow of a promise. This one was earned. It was slow. It was deep. It was sure. It was a kiss that had time. It wasn't the fire of an explosion. It was the deep, penetrating warmth of the hearth. It wasn't about survival. It was about choice. His hand came up, not to my shoulder, but to my face, his fingers threading into my hair, his thumb brushing my cheek, his other hand held mine, our fingers finally lacing together, a perfect fit. We broke, but only slightly, resting our foreheads together. Our breath was even, mixing in the cold, clear air. "I'm here," he whispered. It wasn't a promise of forever. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was a statement of fact. I'm here. "I'm here too," I whispered back. It was the only vow that mattered. A phone vibrated. He sighed, the sound of a man whose work would never, ever be finished. He pulled it out. A sleek, modern smartphone. He looked at the screen. A new fire. A new problem. The city was clean, but the shadows would always find new corners. He didn't answer it. He looked at me. He was waiting, asking. I smiled. I squeezed his hand. "Go," I said. "The city's waiting." He looked relieved. He stood up, putting the phone to his ear. "But Dante," he paused, looking down at me, the boss persona sliding back into place. "Be back by 8, I said. "I'm making clam chowder." He froze, and then he laughed, a real, unguarded, surprising sound. It was the sound of the man I'd kissed, not the man who owned the city. 8 o'clock, he confirmed. "I won't be late." He turned and walked away, his voice already dropping into that familiar, commanding gravel as he spoke into the phone. I stayed on the bench, watching him go. The black briefcase was still under the bench. He'd left it. I reached down, touching the cold plastic. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't a weapon. It was just a memory box, a souvenir of the night we decided to stand. Sometimes, the storm doesn't come to sweep you away. It comes to teach you how to stand. And if a hand reaches for yours, make sure it's one that respects you. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give that hype button a tap so more people can hear this story.